Welcome back, everybody. I have brought today to the podcast my little brother, Todd Parker. Thanks for
You,
joining me today, Todd.
you're so welcome. Thanks for having me. You can't quite see just how much bigger I am than Jana because
Yeah, I
this
was going to
is,
say my big little brother.
and on screen, if you're watching this, you can see that we look the same size, but we're definitely not. Yeah.
I was actually thinking as I was looking at you right now and looking at me, like we do actually kind of look alike.
Yeah, there's a lot of resemblance. Lucky me.
I didn't used to think so, but now we're starting to resemble each other a little bit more.
I'm sorry, Jana. I'm sorry for that.
Um, well, we just had a really nice holiday together. It was really nice to get to see you and your family and our family. And we really couldn't have started out 2021 any better than we did. Don't you agree?
I do. It was, we had to be safe and, practice our distancing but we were able to come up and see you and get out and do some outdoorsy stuff, and nothing better than being with my family, you and my kids with you.
Yeah.
So that was the whole and your kids. That was great.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I brought you on today because as I was doing some driving over the holiday, I was listening to Atomic Habits. And I
Mm-hmm.
really want to do a little podcast just to talk about that with my audience. But it made me start thinking about, New Year's and how we generate New Year's resolutions, how we start off real strong and then usually fall off. And it made me start to just take in what the author was saying in kind of a new way, and thinking about building your habits as not just the goal and the outcome, and not just the process of the goal and the outcome, but really thinking about your habits as who you are and who you identify as, and
Mm.
how your identity shapes your behavior, and then your behavior shapes your identity. So if you want to change a habit, you have to ask yourself, who am I, and what kind of person does this habit that I want to do that I'm not currently doing now? And then it made me think of your profession and your podcast.
Mm.
And so I thought that you would be a great person to come on the show with me today to start the year out and kind of talk a little bit about that and about what you do. And so I'll leave you kind of to think about that, but introduce yourself to our audience and tell everybody what you do.
Well, yeah, thanks. I'm a mindset and performance coach. I'm an executive leadership coach. I'm a college professor. And I have a previous life in the music business as an entrepreneur and A&R guy. So I've worn a lot of hats in my life. Currently, my day is spent coaching both parents and children. I should say young adults, parents and young adults. And executives around personal and professional, as you just said, personal, professional habits of success, as we call them.
Yeah.
And a smaller portion of my week is spent teaching at the local university at Cal State Northridge, California State University Northridge down here in Southern California, teaching communication studies, working, what do we teach? Argumentation, public speaking, all kinds of written and spoken communication. And all the factors and forces that influence whether or not we understand things or how we understand things, I should say.
Yeah.
And how we make sense and meaning out of things. So, all of that dovetails together to create a pretty interesting day for me, day in and day out, week in and week out, because we're dealing with challenges that people face personally and professionally, sometimes with their kids, sometimes with themselves, sometimes with their staff, their team. Towards success, right? What are the challenges towards success, and what's the path? What are the actions we're taking to get there? And specifically, coming all the way back to self, what's the mindset? What are what's the story that's playing out as we pursue these goals?
Mm-hmm. And you recently started a podcast. You want to tell our listeners what that is so they
Oh
can check it
yeah,
out if they
thank
want
you.
to? Yeah.
Thank you for reminding me. Yeah,
Sure.
the Right Questions podcast with my colleague, partner. Really, she's my boss, but I call her my colleague and partner because she doesn't like to be called my boss. But Bridget Sampson. So yeah, the Right Questions podcast. You can find it anywhere and on any podcast player.
Isn't that great that we can do that?
Yeah, I joke all the time. Like I planned on writing a book, Habits, right? I would sit down and I set habits for myself to write the book. And each time I did it, I would start doing it and then I would lose my motivation for it. Being real honest, there were other things that I wanted to be doing. Playing with my kids was one of them. And so it felt like a too big of an undertaking, but doing the podcast, as I'm sure you realize, allows you to just kind of offer thoughts and try to add value to enhance other people's lives in a quick way, and doesn't require as much time.
Yeah, well, perfect segue, because I was just about to go into, the purpose of this podcast is, for anybody who listens, is it is for parents, and it's for parents to have the opportunity to find and connect with professionals in the community. And I guess I'm specifically talking about California mostly, because most of the people who I interview on this show really can only work in California if their license said so. But some of them can work outside of California. But I started with my little community here, but I'm kind of like branching out to different sectors and professionals, because I feel like one of the hardest things for people to do when they are having some kind of problem or feeling or motion where they feel like they need some help, one of the hardest things for them to do is actually get connected to that help that they need. And even when they're willing to make a phone call, they just don't know if the person or the agency that they're making a phone call to is going to be the right one for them, right? I mean, how do you know? So I just kind of started putting my networking meetings of the professionals that I connect with in the community up on this platform so that hopefully we're more accessible, And so so that's kind of what this platform is about and what this podcast is about. And I've brought you on here because I know that I've referred some of my young adult clients to you in the past, and you've done an amazing job with coaching with them. And I'm wondering what your perspective is on, here we are in the second semester of school closures, right? So we're going into this, and you're going into it as a professor of college students. So I'm interested in your perspective of what your experience has been with these students and what you anticipate for the rest of this year, and like what you can offer both parents and, late teenager, young adult, late high school to young adult types of students who are making this transition in their lives. Like what kinds of, I don't know, what are you seeing right now? Where would you go with that? What can we talk about?
Well, that's a really, it's a timely question, as you said. It's an important question. The starting point, from where I sit, right, and it's just one take on it, is exploring our own relationship with our own emotional intelligence. Specifically, when we talk about emotional intelligence, we call it EQ or EIQ, emotional intelligence quotient, like we would talk about IQ, right? And we know that EQ is critically important to success in all facets of life. And specifically the two parts of emotional intelligence, self-awareness and self-management. So the self and then the other, and other awareness and other management. To answer your question is it begins with self and the way we manage self to interact with others. And specifically begins with mindset for both the parent or the young adult, or right, as you said, my college students, right? So to answer your question, I actually begin each semester now right on mindset. Like where are we at with this? What's the story that we're telling ourselves? Is it a story that says, oh my gosh, I can't believe we're doing another semester. I just want to be back in school, which is all fair. Because to be quite honest, so do I. I miss being in person with everyone. But that's not the story I'm telling myself when I show up. So I challenge my students to explore their story. And I would challenge anyone listening, your parents and young adults alike, to what is the story that's playing out? If it's woe is me, why this? You're going to have a difficult relationship with the moment, difficult relationship with studying, a difficult relationship with helping your child study even, right? So in a one word, it begins with mindset. What's the story that you're telling yourself about what's happening?
Yeah.
I also share and often challenge them. In fact, I did this last semester, and I've been doing this with some of my my current clients. To challenge themselves to think about themselves, think of it as an opportunity, right? And I do a lot of facilitation and training around change management in tech companies and whatnot, because they're experiencing change like crazy.
Right.
And your location, I'm sure some of your listeners are well aware of how quickly things change in tech companies. So, but to realize that in change, like, what is our relationship with it, and how are we talking about it? How are we framing it for ourselves? And then what are the actions we take as a result of that framing? I know that if I go into something with a clear why, with a clear purpose, to say, back to saying, embrace the opportunity rather than see it as a challenge. School, virtual school, online school, virtual school for a student with disabilities, right? Like, we can just keep stacking the challenges. And one of my current clients is dealing with this. And I told him, like, look, we all have things we have to traverse in our lives, and these are yours, right? You see them, you recognize them, and you recognize it's more challenging for you in this way, in this way, in this way, but not in these ways, right? Whereas somebody else is going to struggle here. So instead of focusing on how hard this is and why you have to have this thing or be dealing with this thing, let's look at it as an opportunity to say, I'm going to have to hack myself eventually. I'm going to have to figure this out eventually to be successful. Why not do it now in this really safe and protected environment of school, and see what happens, right? Learn, back to emotional intelligence, learn about myself, become more self-aware, what I do when I'm feeling certain and thinking certain ways, and then how I interact with others, my parents, my teachers, right? How I ask for help, how I speak to myself and either do or don't follow through. All of those things are in a long-winded answer, Jana. Those are the things we're talking about in coaching often.
What do you mean? We're not long-winded, us Parkers.
Did you say be brief and concise and to the point? Come on.
No, so yeah, I totally hear what you're saying. And I think that I think it's part of our DNA somehow, to always kind of see the opportunity, and I recognize that that's not the case with everybody.
Right. Being solution oriented and solution minded, it's like, it's a muscle that I recognize you and I, Jana, were fortunate enough to have an upbringing and parents that instilled that in us.
Yeah.
And I'm hyper aware that that's not the good fortune that everybody has. And, just like yourself with this podcast and your career, like, we've both made it a point to influence people in that capacity and help them understand just how much control they have over themselves, and therefore everything that happens to them, right? That they can design their lives. So specifically to the students that you work with and the parents, right? Designing, being proactive, which is this podcast, connecting people, but being proactive and taking action to drive yourself, your kid, right, to the place that is best for them, for the resources, to the opportunities that will serve them.
Mm-hmm.
And taking it though, and taking control of it,
Right. And
empowering them to do so.
right. And it's hard to change. So just like the book that I was listening to, Atomic Habits, he says, like you have to work the muscle, like you're saying, all the time. And you have to work this new muscle that you're not used to working. So you have to keep asking yourself the question, what kind of person do I want to be? And what kind of person does this thing that I'm trying to do or build this new habit? Because you can't just go like, I'm going to be a positive person now. And I'm going to look at all of this positively. And I'm just
going to, if I could interject, nor should we. Like we don't need to, nobody lives their life in positivity and happiness all the time. And, by most studies, we live for a healthy person, we live about half our lives in a negative headspace. Mm-hmm. So just being able to recognize where our thoughts are, where our mind's at, how we're framing people, situations, obstacles, and then perhaps, as we encourage, to reframe it, right? That we're not going to change the circumstance outright, but we can change our relationship to the circumstance. We can change our relationship to any challenges or disabilities that we face. We can change our relationship to the teacher, right? Which I tell students about myself as well. You can change your relationship to what's going on with the teacher, to the assignment even. You can change, and in doing so, change your relationship to the moment and give yourself an opportunity to sometimes understand, like to hear, to get past the story that's playing out in your head and actually grab the moment for what it is rather than what we put on it.
Mm-hmm. And so this is what you work on with people in your coaching practice?
Yeah. Coaching is all is all guided by the client. It's all, and it comes from the belief that the client really does have the answers and the wisdom inside of them. Mm-hmm. Just like you and I do, Jenna, we get stuck, like we have blind spots, and we require, experts often or others to show us those blind spots. Right? When I want to be a better athlete, or not an athlete, I should say exercise more effectively, I consult with coaches. I get with a coach mm-hmm. to show me the correct form so I don't hurt myself, so I don't overextend myself, so, right? To know what the right timing is for any of it, or what the right habit, to use your word, right? What the right habit is, and to know what that process looks like. I mean, I'll add to your conversation, and we just did a podcast on mini habits a couple weeks ago. And one of the things we were talking about was, and I'll try to connect this to something you said earlier about identity statement, but setting very small goals for yourself rather than very large ones, right? Grand, but just starting real small. Like the book we were basing on was Mini Habits. I'm forgetting the author's name at the moment. But there's this great story in it about the one push-up challenge. And he tells a story about, I just wanted to do one push-up. But once you say, okay, I'll just give yourself permission to do one push-up, you end up doing 2 or 5. You're like, oh, that one's hard. Okay, I could do 10. Yeah, I could do 10 today. And then you come back the next day and you're like, okay, I did 10. No, but that's lightweight stuff. I can do 15. I can do 20. And starting very small, and you end up just engaged in the thing you want to be doing.
Right. And then you are a push-upper.
You get pushed up. Right. And so for identity, you said to live in alignment, or to make choices when you're thinking about actions that are in alignment, not just with your values, but specifically like who you want to be in the world. Maybe not who you are at the moment, but who you want to be. Right. I have, and I coach people on creating identity statements that are really important to framing everything that you do. Right. Like mine includes like, tolerance marker. I'm just thinking to myself now, because I have it on automatically in my head. Todd Lawrence Parker, switch guide, expression, happiness, right? So my values: happiness, health, abundance, gratitude, joy, courage. All right. But health, mental and physical. All right. So when I don't feel, and this is what we work on in coaching, when I don't feel like working out, when I don't feel like reading that book, when I don't feel like showing up for the thing, I remind myself of my identity statement.
Mm-hmm.
I meditated on in the morning, habits.
Yeah.
I use it as a muscle that I flex when I feel myself drifting, habits,
Mm-hmm.
as a way of being self-aware, emotional intelligence, so that I make choices that sometimes challenge what I'm feeling and lead me to the place that I want to be, rather than the place otherwise. Yeah.
Well, I interview a lot of therapists, because I work in mental health. I don't mean to put you on the spot here, but
no, great
what would
question.
you
I already know.
say is the difference between a therapist and a coach?
So coaching is focused on the present and focused on the future. We're not so concerned with the past and the why. We believe that answering those questions of the why do I do this, why do I do that, where does it come, all very important, and questions that should be answered. And I advise anyone to see a therapist. I've seen therapists in my life, still see a therapist sometimes, got to retread that tire. It's healthy. I like it. I enjoy it. Right. But the biggest difference is we set goals and we work backwards from the goal to the present moment. And then a great coach will, like any great coach, will hold you accountable in the ways that we set up in the coaching agreement, in the ways that we agree to, that I'm going to hold you accountable in the role that I play in you reaching those goals. We measure success based on those outcomes, and we make tweaks along the way to ensure that we get there.
Wow, that was really succinct. That was good.
Well, it's what we do.
Yeah,
It does go a lot of places. I'll say that sometimes I'll be retained in a situation to do professional coaching, and we'll set some goals, and we'll try to set goals. And what we'll find is that it's that they're hazy, that it's difficult to figure out what the future looks like because there's challenges in the present. And that often exists in the personal realm rather than the professional. So coaching definitely dips into both parts of life, or I should say all parts of life. But the main difference is we're looking forward, we're setting goals, and we're going to reach them. We're going to hit them. And it has an ending. Coaching isn't supposed to go on indefinitely forever. We do 8 sessions, 12 sessions, and you should be well on your way to then coaching yourself and armed with the tools to go on and really do it on your own.
Mm-hmm. And so when is the time that a person thinks to themselves, you know what, I think I need a coach?
If you're stuck and you've tried a couple things, or if you're stuck and you don't even know what to try, that's the time that those are blind spots, right? Or just, I shouldn't say blind spots. We're just at a loss. Usually with some probing and some questions, the right questions, will unlock what's standing there. And once you see it, you get to make choices as to what you do from there. Once it's crystal clear to you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So anyone that's feeling stuck or challenged, wants to level up in their career, in their schoolwork, I offer my services for free, obviously, to all of my students. Tell them, you've got me in office hours I'm here. Just come be with me. And a lot of them really do take me up on it. So, what mindset, and this is for the parents and the parents of the students that, that you work with, right? What's the mindset that they're going into it with? We just keep coming back to that. And we ask them questions about what they're thinking about it and how they're feeling about it. And have them reflect on what the actions then that they want to take or they are taking, and let them see how it doesn't serve them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Can you say anything about just kind of what you're noticing with students that you work with now in this, and I know you don't give advice, but anything that you could help a parent right now?
We're not coaching right now. We're not. Right. I'm not coaching right now. I could get.
Okay.
I'm not.
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested. What little tidbit could a parent take away from listening to this right now, who has a senior who's graduating from high school in distance learning, or a student who's, when they're considering, should you go to college right now when it's online, or, or for students that are having a really hard time and their mental health is deteriorating, or they're spending a ton of time scrolling through, Snapchat or Instagram, or things that are just kind of like numbing them. That was a whole lot of
what I hear you saying is
questions.
sort of, I guess I hear in there like a lack of motivation, right? A lack of
and fear, motivation,
fear.
and fear, and like life
Sometimes
stopped.
indifference. So there's some apathy going on. I notice. I feel that from students for sure.
Yeah.
Even from executives, right? From people in their personal lives, there's a little bit of we're the situation that we're in is wearing on people.
Right.
Clearly. So in terms of, I'm trying to think of your question now. What do I share with students?
Yeah,
I got it.
Students and parents who are worried about their kids. So
I'm pretty direct, and I consider myself a realist.
Me too.
So I'm just trying to look at like what's the reality that we're dealing with, so that we can make the best choices given the circumstance. Because I don't control COVID. I don't control stay-at-home orders. I don't control when we're going to get to see each other again, and that's just real, and that's okay, right? So I can function within it, and I can be really healthy and thriving as best possible within it. So I tell my students, I tell the parents, this is capital IS. This is what's happening. It's not really going to change that much going forward. And the reason I say that is business realizes that people have a better work-life balance this way. There's all kinds of research coming out that companies, private and public, are saving money. They have happier employees on the whole. Those that are, obviously we know people lost their jobs, but those that are employed, right? They're finding a better work-life balance. There are challenges to, absolutely. So there's a new set of challenges, but there is realities to the giant pause that the world just experienced that are gonna be lasting in business and in our lives, probably forever. I'm going out on a limb here. We're doing it. It's going to live forever on the internet. So you could come back and grab this video and say, Todd, you were totally wrong. But some portion of this is going to stay. School, some portion of this for school is going to stay. It already was part of it. Maybe not in the elementary level or the K through 12 level as much, but certainly on the collegiate level, because it was already going there. So I'd say embrace it. What's the advice? What's the suggestion? What's the offer? Embrace it. Stop rebuffing or pushing it off and thinking like, oh, this is going to go away. I can do little tricks and little stopgap measures to get me to the next thing. Yeah. No, let's embrace it and figure it out and sit with it. And sit with our fears. When my kids are afraid, I ask them to sit with their fear. Like, what are you actually afraid of? Be it academics or something physical. They don't want to climb the rock
play
wall
structure
at the park. Yeah. The play structure, Jameson, my son, with you. Yeah. He didn't want to climb it. You saw what I did. We had a whole, conversation, and then I let him do what he wanted. And he went to the other play structure, tested it out.
Yeah.
Then he went back to the big one and was feeling prepared, right? Maybe it was my mistake for starting him on the big one. It was too ambitious, right? And so we went to the little one. I don't know, because he went up there because of me. But that's the thing, right? This is the reality, capital IS. Embrace it. Stop fighting it, right? When we it's not like going along to get along. It's understanding what is and seeing how you can be successful within it. That would be true for COVID. That would be true for a learning disability. That would be true if I was the parent who was juggling my job and a student who needed me a little bit more than maybe the next kid. It would be true in every capacity. And the emotional intelligence part for both parent and student, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? First part. What do I do when I'm in that state, in that place? Second part. And then what is the other person feeling, needing, thinking? But really, what do they need from me right now? Parent, child, uh, uh, teacher to child, right? Young adult.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, and then the last part, now what behaviors, how can I communicate? What actions can I take that will meet the needs of that person, that individual? Right? And that's true. I'm going to say also, Jenna, for the student, if you have any students listening, right? What does your parent need? Like, what do they need to know and hear from you? How are you communicating with them? I talk to my young adult clients all the time about what is their relationship that they're forging and building as they become adults in the world. Like, how do they want to be seen by their parents? Because if you teach other people how to treat you by the way you treat yourself, by the way you express yourself. So those behaviors, when those characteristics, right, those values that we do and don't live up to, all of that comes into play also in the relationship with student to parent. And I think they have a real responsibility to meet the needs of their parents as well. And that might be a departure from something they're told in other places, but I challenge them to do so. And it typically improves the relationship.
I would like to challenge my 12-year-old stepson to do that.
Yeah.
And I would like to challenge my fiance to do that. I mean, it's hard. I don't know. Anybody, I think, who's listening to you say all of that right now was thinking about circumstances that they are having right now at home. And, when you get we perpetuate these cycles of behavior with each other, right? Based on our personalities. And so we get in the same arguments and the same fights over and over, parent to kid.
Yep.
And if you have that self-awareness to stop and think because what you want to do is just yell, right?
Yep.
But what they need from you is something different. But can you, in that moment, make yourself give them something different, that thing that they need, recognize it, and then provide it for them? Yeah. If you don't, you're just going to perpetuate the same cycle. Nothing's ever going to change. So, I mean, that just really resonated a lot.
Said. The other day, my daughter came in. She was taking her online parents can't help state assessment. I think it was testing her for where she's at on her grade level.
Right.
And we're not allowed to help them. The student, she knows we're not allowed to help. She knows that the test gets increasingly harder as she gets questions right. She came in tears. I could see her falling apart. And so I in the past, because I get it, I'm a parent, I get frustrated with her. Like, I'm working, she comes in here, what are you crying for? No. Like, just, you'll figure it out. Go figure it out. But it doesn't ever work, right? It never works. I have to recognize what's going on in me. Oh, okay, Todd. Then this all happens in 5-10 seconds. Oh, Todd, you're stressed out because she's taking you away from the email you just spent 15 minutes, and now you're gonna have to come back to it. It's going to take you get reset, and not good at multitasking here. Oh, why'd you interrupt me? No. What does she need, Todd? What does she need? That's what start. What does she need? She's crying. Your daughter's crying. What does she need? And I bring myself back down and say, okay, sweetie, Isabella, what's going on? Why? What's the tears for? Right? And she share. Oh, is that? Then I ask her. I says, "That's something that we want to cry over? Meaning, is that something that's are your tears gonna serve you to move forward here, or what are they doing for you?" She goes, "Well," she kind of, no, okay, all right. So what can we do? So I coach her in the same way I would coach a student, my own students, a parent, coach her to unlock the answer in herself. And because when we do that, we're far more inclined to follow through, because we came up with the solution and we decided we were going to do it. And so to answer your earlier question about coaching as well, that's part of it, right? That right there.
Yeah. It's funny you bring up that example, because that is exactly the example that the problem that we're trying to solve in our household right now.
Hmm.
So what we've come up with is, because when the kids go and barge in on Jeremy, if he is in the middle of something, he cannot handle it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, um, so, so I'm like, okay, how am I going to help both of them? So,
Yeah.
so this is what we came up with. This is the strategy. We haven't tried it yet. We tried to have a family meeting on Sunday to, which one of the kids participated in. The other one just said it was boring and threw a fit. But we tried. But so Jeremy is going to have a card on his desk, because they earn their screen time with little raffle tickets.
Right.
So
Right.
I have a big index card that says, um, it says, can I solve this problem myself? Okay, on the top.
Nice.
And
Nice.
so for Jeremy, like, if someone comes in, because he doesn't have that self-awareness yet to like regulate, he can just hold up the card so that he doesn't flip out on them.
Hmm.
And then the kid is prompted, can I solve this problem myself? And then if yes, they take the ticket. Okay. And they just leave it. They take the ticket. They go solve the problems themselves. And then it says, if no, leave the card here and dad will come help me on his next break. And I'll get the ticket after that.
Hmm.
So either
Hmm.
way, they earn something, and then they have regulated. They've made an appropriate choice, and Jeremy doesn't yell,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
go and help them and give them what they need if he needs to. But, so we're going to try that. Let
Well,
you
your
know how it
example
goes.
brings I let me know how it goes. I'm sure I
I
will find out
will.
how it goes. Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's just an example of like turning the screws on a process, right?
Mm-hmm.
And figuring out what we have to do with what capital IS, what is. We're
Mm-hmm.
working at home with kids. I'm doing homeschooling and I'm a teacher and right. And I'm jumping in and I'm sitting in the same spot all the time as they,
Yeah.
come in and come and leave. So it's a whole new situation for all of us. And so when
Right.
you talk about Jeremy, your fiance and the relationship to the kids, all of us could also do with a little bit of grace for ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
right? To take some of that pressure off, and for others to say, like, gosh, this really is an unprecedented, I can't believe I said it. This is a weird, it just came out. I'm going to take
We're
that
all in
back.
this together. We're all in this together.
It's a weird time. We've never experienced this. And so why the grace comes from, like, why would we know how to do work at home and be our kids' teacher and be their counselor and be their, specialist and advocate? Like, how would we know? And their cook and their maid, right? How would we know how to do all that? We wouldn't. And so parents, like, give yourself a break. This is challenging. It's challenging for all of us.
Yeah.
Um, and to your point, you've tuned in here to Jana's podcast, right? To this show, to ensure that you're connecting with the resources, if necessary, to not just empower yourself and your student, but to wrestle control and put it back in your, in your wheelhouse, in the play,
Mm-hmm.
it under your, well, in your hands, I should say, not
Yeah.
to sound like
Yeah.
Allstate.
um, I was gonna say, like, are you wearing khakis? Jake from State Farm.
somehow we're both thinking of insurance commercials now. We're not brother and sister at all, because everyone else is like, why are they
Yeah.
thinking about insurance? Yeah.
Um, well, Todd, this has been a really fantastic conversation. I appreciate you joining me here, and I want
Yeah.
the parents to be able to find you should they want to access your services. So, how can you be reached?
Yeah. So our company is Samson Coaching and Consulting. So it's samsoncoachingandconsulting.com. You could find me. My email is Todd at Samson coachingandconsulting.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn, Todd Parker, and of course on Facebook and Instagram. My Instagram handle is at Todd Parker Official. And as always, if you as I said earlier, the Right Questions podcast, if you want to hear some more about the ideas, we've been talking about here.
Yeah, it's really good. Those are really helpful little tidbits. Like one of my habits that I do when I go on, like when I need to find some inspiration, and I want to have like a creative morning of writing, or if I have to write a report, or I have to go into a meeting, or if I have to create a PowerPoint or something where I have to be creative, I listen to some kind of podcast that starts to generate that kind of thinking, and mindset. And your podcast is one of them in my rotation.
Oh,
So,
well, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that a lot. My partner, Bridget, I should just mention, her and I both, but specifically her this year, we offer a lot of free workshops, and we're going to be offering a free workshop every month. So you can check those out on our website. This past month, we did the I Am Remarkable workshop, which is about women empowerment, and it's a lot of women celebrating women. We had a great turnout for that. So, and that's open. It's open to everybody. It's not just open to women, of course. And so we try to cover a lot of different topics. Bridget's also heavily involved in created something called the Transgender School, and is offering support and advocacy to parents and students who are in the community. So there's a lot of different things that you might find when you go to our site. Just trying to be valuable to everyone, and that's it. That's all we're trying to do, is serve people as best possible.
Great. And that's on samsoncoachingandconsulting.com also?
You could look that up on Transgender School.
Transgender School. Got it. Well, I'll link all of those too in the show notes.
Yeah, perfect. Beautiful. Again, it's just about connecting people. If it's something that they could use, connecting them to something that is of value and safe and helpful.
Yeah, you know what? I might actually ask Bridget to come on this podcast and talk about Transgender School.
She would love to.
Yeah,
it's an important part of, we do a lot of DEI training, diversity, equity, and inclusion training.
Mm-hmm.
And, often that was around, people of color, which is, all the different diversity stuff, and is really, thank goodness, now also moved into all these new forms of diversity, equity, and inclusion with LGBTQ and all of it. So it's a big part of our world, and hopefully people make their way over there, and that they could use some support.
Yeah. Well, thanks for all of that, Todd. Well, thanks again for joining me. And
Deanna, thanks for having me, my big sis. Happy New Year. Yeah. I'm sure I'll talk to you later.
Yeah, I will. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.